Thanks everybody for joining us here today for our June 2026 TECC-X meeting hosted by the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative and Tribal Climate Health Project. So we'd love for you to introduce yourself in the chat. Please share your name and what tribe or organization you're with. We will begin by going through our various opportunities and that we're aware of that are on our radar, but we want you to share any that you're aware of that we have not shared that are relevant to this group. And our breakout today for the TECC-X or the tech side will be how tribal partners can advance your tribe's clean energy priorities. So I'm excited that we have grid alternatives and tribal energy alternatives, as well as the Alliance for Tribal Clean Energy to share more about their offerings with you all. So you all can partner with them and utilize their programming and offerings to advance your tribe's clean energy priorities. And the Tribal Climate Health Project session will focus on tribal climate adaptation through pollution mitigation. And I think this is SB 54 focused, Shasta, right?
Correct.
So join Tribal Climate Health Project for SB 54 focused pollution mitigation. I think it's really focused on kind of the fund development activities going on right now, and join us and the tech breakout to meet with Alliance for Tribal Clean Energy and Grid Alternatives. So we'll get there in just a few minutes. I'm Josh Simmons, co-director of the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative. We don't have Angie today, but then Shasta.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Shasta Gaughan, Executive Director of the Paula Environmental Department for the Paula Band of Mission Indians, and also the Director of the Tribal Climate Health Project and co-director of TECC.
So a lot of titles. But Shasta's doing great work. So Tribal Climate Health, the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative has our three pillars. If you're not familiar with them, we have our capacity building and technical assistance program, our economic and workforce development program, and policy and regulatory advocacy program. We are focused on identifying and advancing climate, energy, and related economic and workforce development goals of the Southern California Tribal Chairman Association member tribes, but we have statewide offerings like our Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative exchange meetings, and we'll touch upon some of those and regional offerings as well beyond the TCA tribes in just a moment. And Shasta, overview of TCHP.
Yeah, so the Tribal Climate Health Project has been around for actually more like 10 years now, and we've utilized a variety of funding sources at the federal and state levels and worked with a lot of great partner agencies in California and elsewhere and organizations to bring health-focused climate adaptation and mitigation strategies to tribal communities and nations throughout the United States. And we are happy to work with TECC and do these two-part or these choose your own adventure TECC-X's where you can talk about energy or you can talk about climate. And if you can't decide which one you want to go to, we do record, so you can always go back and check out the one you missed. But of course, I always am partial to the TCHP side of things. But you'll get that opportunity to choose when we get to the breakouts, and look forward to talking to you guys about pollution mitigation a little bit later.
Shasta. So we have a new events calendar that we are starting to populate with the events that we are aware of and are being shared with us. So I encourage you to go to socaltech.org/events. We are seeking to regularly update this. And if you have an event that you would like for us to add to our events calendar, you can go to the website and hit the submission request form for us to review and consider adding it to our calendar. Amy or Sharina, anything else that you all want to add to that?
Nope, but just put those links in the chat for you all.
Great, thanks, Sharina. Okay, and so you choose your own adventure here today in terms of joining TECC or Tribal Climate Health Project. I'm partial to TECC, so I think you should join the TECC meetings. But again, well, you also can go and view the recordings and the materials of the other one you weren't able to join in our archives. So this is also new up on our website. I believe the full recordings are up posted here, right? Okay. I'm getting a nod confirmation of that. So yes, so you don't have to miss out. You can go back in your free time and see what you missed. Okay, so we're going to jump into the opportunity roundtable, and I'm excited to pass this over to Shasta, just add color commentary. So Shasta.
Thanks, Josh. And, on the previous slide, it did say if you know of opportunities that you would like folks to know about. I know that for a lot of people, we get some of the same opportunities in our emails over and over again, but I'd always rather get notice of those opportunities more than once than not hear about them at all. So if you've got stuff you've heard about and you think the rest of us would benefit from, please go ahead and throw that in the chat. If you have a link, that's always great too. And if you're looking for opportunities, we have an opportunity tracker for the TECC member tribes that you can take a look at and find opportunities. But on the next slide, we wanted to highlight a few that are coming up from the Strategic Growth Council. These are big ones. And so these are good opportunities for you to take a look at. And the Strategic Growth Council spent a lot of time doing listening sessions with tribes and with other folks to figure out what is the best way to implement and roll out these programs. What should they include? And so we have round 2 of the tribal capacity building program. Round 1 was a pilot program, and I believe that SGC learned a lot from that pilot program where they funded 6 tribes to help them develop their capacity for securing funding on climate and housing related projects. And I know a lot about that because I was part of the TA team that was engaged to provide technical assistance to the tribes that got those awards. And I think that, again, we were able to give SGC a lot of input and advice on that pilot to roll into round 2 to make it even more effective for the tribes that are going to apply. So we really encourage you, especially if you've got climate and housing related projects that you could use some assistance on and need the funding for. It's complicated, but it's a great program. So you can do it. And then there's always other funding opportunities, geothermal, which if you're like me, you didn't realize that you could do geothermal pretty much anywhere. You don't have to live in Yellowstone or in, where is it in Northern Europe? One of the countries up there has a bunch of geothermal, but it's hot under the ground. So take a look at those opportunities if you think you could do geothermal. The TCC, the Transformative Climate Communities, that deadline is in a week for pre-proposals. And then the application's on September 30th. So again, you can reach out to us if you want some TA assistance, learning more about those opportunities. Wildfire prevention. If you've ever worked with CAL FIRE, you know it can be a challenge, but they have a lot of money to offer to help tribes protect their communities through fuels reduction and other types of landscape management, fire prevention work. I'm not sure what the National Forest Foundation Matching Awards program is, but again, there are many different opportunities here. Let's go to the next one. You will have access to these slides and you'll be able to look some of these up yourself. BRIC grants from FEMA are back. They're a little bit less flexible than they've been in the past. Lots of tribal energy stuff out there. So please feel free to reach out to us if you want more information on any of these grants. Josh?
Great. Yeah, and I put in the chat, Strategic Growth Council, who has a ton of funding opportunities out right now, is having a webinar tomorrow at 3 p.m. I put the link in the chat. I just saw a notice of that link this morning. So attend that if you're interested. And then on the BRIC opportunity and the Unleashing Tribal Energy Development Grants, DOEs, we had a prior webinar where we had a grant writing plan and no follow review for that. We have a few upcoming events. Review these. We're getting a little short on time here, so we want to get to our sessions. And then from input opportunities, the California Energy Commission's Distributed Energy Backup Assets Grant Program has a solicitation coming up, a listening session for that. And the CPUC's Low Income Oversight Board public member application is due. They're seeking applicants with tribal community experience, and so it'd be great to get some solid tribal representation on the Low Income Oversight Board. So I mentioned that TECC has some regional programs with regional offerings that go beyond our member tribes. So we're partnered with the Southern California Regional Energy Network and separately with San Diego Regional Energy Network to increase tribal enrollment and participation in the Regional Energy Network programming. It is focused on energy efficiency, but it does provide support for pursuing and advancing resiliency and other clean energy needs. Tribes that are served and tribal community members that are served by Southern California Edison, Southern California Gas Company, or San Diego Gas and Electric are eligible. There are regional energy networks throughout the states. So if you are served by Pacific Gas and Electric, there are a number of regional energy networks that are covering those territories that tribal communities and members should be eligible for. But in terms of SoCalRen and SDRen, please reach out to coordinator at socaltech.org if you're served by those Southern California utilities and you're interested in participating. We are also partnered with the Grid Alternatives and California Resources Board on the Access Clean California program. I'm not going to really go into details on this because our grid and tribal energy alternatives friends are going to share more about that in their slides. But this is focused on helping tribal community members, regardless of where they live throughout California, check their eligibility for electric vehicle rebates and incentives. And TECC and Prosper Sustainably are providing guidance and support for enrollment with those applications. Okay, all right, now it's time to break out. So the TECC will be in breakout room number 1. So if you're interested in learning more about the programming offered by the Alliance for Tribal Clean Energy and Grid Alternatives Clean Mobility programs, as well as Tribal Energy Alternatives programming, please join us in breakout room number 1. And if you want to learn more about SB 54, the Plastic Pollution Mitigation Fund, and participate in facilitated discussion on shaping the fund's future programming, which include available programming and funding for tribes, please join Shasta and the Tribal Climate Health Project team in breakout room number 2. All right. Made it. Let's get the screen up. Oh, I forgot to click on that. Instructions for people to join the breakout room. I'll know for next time. Okay, well, we'll give it 30 seconds or so for people to migrate over. Okay, I think it's enough time. People will figure it out. So yeah, thanks for joining us in the session focused on how TECC's tribal nonprofit partners, in particular, Grid Alternatives, Tribal Energy Alternatives, and the Alliance for Tribal Clean Energy can advance your tribe's clean energy priorities. So I'm excited to have Matt Dannenberg with the Head of Partnerships for the Alliance for Tribal Clean Energy, as well as Taylor Sieben. Did I say that right, Taylor? The Senior Program Manager, Clean Mobility for Grid Alternatives, Tomasio Anderson, the California Tribal Program Director for Tribal Energy Alternatives, and Sarah Tinsley, the Tribal Workforce Coordinator for Tribal Energy Alternatives. And I will allow them to introduce themselves in more detail when their segments come up. And we're going to start with the Alliance. So Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you and just tell me when to advance slides.
Cool. Thanks so much, Josh. So yeah, Buju, Matt Dannenberg, Indigenous Kaz, Makwan Dodam, Mashkazibing, and Dunjba, Minawab, Milwaukee. And Matt Dannenberg, I'm a citizen of the Bad River Band of Lake Superior Chippewa, living here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Bear Clan. I'm head of partnerships at the Alliance. It's an honor to join you. Thanks, Josh, and everybody, all the tribes of the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association for facilitating this space today. Ever since, well, got my start as a community organizer. Just a little bit about me in the environmental conservation space. Worked with getting out the native vote all across Wisconsin, and that led me into energy eventually, where I had the opportunity to work in the Biden administration at the U.S. Department of Energy and serve in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, which no longer exists, and then served as Secretary Granholm's tribal liaison And while I was there, I always wanted to get to Southern California, Tribal Chairman Association events, and hadn't been able to. So glad to be here today talking to you all about the Alliance, and glad to be continuing to do this work in this space, serving our people and advancing energy sovereignty. Yeah, next slide. So just a bit about the Alliance. So we were founded about 10 years ago. Sherry Smith is our CEO, Mi'kmaq descendant, and we're a national organization. We have staff. We're fully remote and have staff. I'm in the Great Lakes. We have onboarded Anna Sattler up in Anchorage, Alaska. Our vice president of tribal engagement is former chairman Navangima of the Hopi tribes. We have staff all across Turtle Island here, and our mission here is really to advance tribal energy sovereignty. Make sure there's a just energy transition for tribes. And our support, we're 100% supported by our philanthropic partners. So tribes do not have to pay for the services that we provide in-house. So we'll go to the next slide here. So this is, I provided all the slides to Josh. Some of them I'm going to flip through really fast. But since, I can do this presentation for an hour, I can do it for 12 to 15 minutes, which is what I think I have here. This is kind of the overview of some of the services that the Alliance provides to advance energy sovereignty. And I always like to characterize it as when I was a Fed, there were things that I could not do, or the U.S. Department of Energy could not do, and I see the Alliance filling in a lot of those gaps. And I'll also acknowledge too, I'm grateful to be here alongside Tribal Energy Alternatives. Had a great working relationship with the executive directors there, and my past role and continuing onward. And so I think there's so much work to be done, and I love the idea of braiding all of our various resources, again, all in service of advancing tribal energy projects, reducing that energy burden, and it's all about climate and our future generations. So and then too, thanks Josh for all your work, and excited to explore our partnerships here. So just wanted to preface with that. And so we have our technical assistance team. When you're looking at kind of soup to nuts of starting we mainly focus on solar and storage projects. But if there is a clean energy component, we're open to hydro, wind, geothermal, and other technologies, but really our bread and butter is solar and storage. So every step along the way, our technical assistance team is there to be as involved as you'd like us to be. Is that advising you all before your meeting with the utility? Is it being in the meeting with the utility, or a government agency, a regulatory body, for example? So yeah, from that pre-development stages to deployment, and then O&M, being there each step along the way to provide assistance. If there's something that we don't have expertise in-house for, we have our preferred provider program, which I'll get into later. So that's technical assistance. We have our project finance team, which supports capital stack planning. And we have a Weaver platform, which is our modeling, so we can be running the numbers and doing a little financial diligence as you're scoping out your project and making sure that all the numbers are looking accurate, and that you can be as confident in your tribe's investment as possible with that model. So it's best in class. We have this is the popular item, funding supports. So we have our Indigenous Power and Light Fund. So yeah, that's bullet 3, and then the last bullet, we rolled that out a couple of years ago, and we're in the process now of getting out our second round of awards for that. It's yeah, I'll get into that a little bit as well. And it's really as we're developing a relationship with you and your tribe, and we're learning about your project, We will invite tribes to apply if the project meets our rubric of eligibility. We want to make sure that we're focusing on projects that again are alleviating suffering, reducing energy burden, promoting climate resilience. So just a few examples there. We worked on some wind turbine blade replacement up in a rural village in Alaska that needed the turbine blades replaced, and is also one of the villages that got hit by Typhoon Hwang. We recently invested in a solar system for a radio station that served many tribes in the Great Plains. It's essential community service. They were experiencing, a lot of issues with costs of providing power for the radio station and stressing the budget. So we're able to work there to support that project as well. So just a couple examples of the Indigenous Power and Light Fund, and again, happy to talk more about that individually. Policy advocacy, I'd say this is one of our strongest suits. We're involved in dockets with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, pushing for more equity in interconnection queue reform, and then involved in closely with TECC and other coalitions, regional coalitions around the country, and engaging state utility commissions and regional transmission organizations and independent system operators in ensuring tribes are at the table. We're setting the table when it comes to pushing the envelope on transmission planning and advocating in those spaces. We have our education workforce pillar. Most notably, we just rolled out our Tribal Energy Leaders Fellowship Program. We had our first cohort this year in partnership with Haskell University, and so we'll be looking to launch the second cohort of that, I believe, in the new year. So looking to develop that pipeline of and enhance the skills of the next and current generation of tribal energy leaders with that program. Our Chief Knowledge and Innovation Officer has a immense wealth of knowledge and curriculum on energy technologies and 101s that we often provide to tribal councils, tribal energy staff, et cetera. So we go to the next slide. I kind of covered everything on this one for the most part, but so that's the what and kind of the how. Everything's based in and navigating those resources from our tribal engagement team. So before I was head of partnerships, I led this team, and I mentioned Chairman Nbangiman, now our vice president, leads that team. So we can go to the next slide. So yeah, every commitment and conversation starts with our tribal engagement team. We want to understand your community, how you go about making decisions, what your goals are, what your strategic energy plan is, if you have that, and that will really inform navigating our services, or again, pointing you in the right direction if you have needs that we necessarily cannot meet. So so you have a focus point of contact, so you're not dealing with a whole bunch of people from all of our different pillars talking to you all at once. So go to the next slide. Yep. So again, just an overview of our pillars here. I talked through all of them at length already. Go to the next slide. Again, just these are mostly for reference, but afterwards. But this is a list of some of the services we do provide. Again, we don't necessarily do soups to nuts on energy planning, but we can definitely get you started and point it in the right direction. So again, we can be involved in these services, and then if there's something we don't cover or gets to the next phase that we don't have in-house, we have our preferred providers. So we'll go to the next slide. Yep. So this is one of the things when I was at DOE, it's like, well, we can't publish a list of actors out there that have expressed interest in acting well with tribes. So at the Alliance, we're currently working through and are in process of vetting and meeting with over 200 organizations. So energy service providers, solar installers, EV contractors, you name it, that we meet annually at our RE Plus convention. We are the tribal partner of RE Plus, and so we go there and we network with all these energy service providers, as well as provide a curriculum about interacting appropriately with tribes called our Pathways to Trust program. And that is on the Solar Energy Industry Association's learning management system. So we published that last year and are encouraging and actually require our preferred providers to take that curriculum so they demonstrate their commitment to educating themselves further about working appropriately with tribes. And we actually just hosted an in-person version of that in partnership with Blue Lake Rancheria and a lot of the tribes in Northern California there. And so, we're all on a learning journey, and we want to make sure the folks that we're referring tribes to or supporting your RFP processes, that we've done some background into looking at their track record and that you're getting the best deals and quality product in your partners on your energy projects. Let's go to the next slide. Yep. Again, talked about this at length. So again, this is here for reference. We can go to the next slide. I talked about the TELF here, vocational training. Again, we can, cater your workforce development or education needs, based on what we have to offer. And if, again, we don't have it in-house what you need, we'll point you in the right direction. So next slide. This is one of my favorite things about the Alliance. Again, I'm glad that Josh, you're promoting that new community calendar, so we'll make sure to get our events on there. Each May, early to mid-May, we do our Tribal Energy Evolution Summit. We had our 4th annual at Tulalip this past year, over usually between 200 and 300 attendees. We want to keep it tight and so that we can really interact and engage in a meaningful, deep way. And thanks for Josh coming and present there to talk about our national coalition effort to really bring our regions together and collaborate in new and exciting ways. And it's really a space where energy managers, interns, people can come together to share best practices. So we look forward to continuing to invite interested folks to that event in the years to come. And then we now have partnered with NFOA as well on an annual finance forum. So really enhancing and having that dialogue about clean energy finance, the ins and outs, the 101 of that. And we held that in conjunction with NFOA this past April. Let's go to the next slide. So yeah, just rounding things out here. Probably a little over time, I apologize. But yeah, we really, our guiding principle from Sherry Smith, our CEO, is this Etowaptamunk, which is Mi'kmaq for two-eyed seeing. So the blending of Western and indigenous ideologies to bring the best of both worlds together to advance energy sovereignty. And so grateful to all of our Native professionals here in the energy space and to all of our allies here coming together and helping and supporting each other in pursuit of energy sovereignty. So the last slide, I believe it's got our contact. The tribes at Tribal Clean Energy. If you have an inquiry, that's one of the best places to start, and you'll get referred to a tribal liaison that will connect you with our resources. And you're also feel free to reach out to me. I'm planning on attending these meetings monthly and involved with the workforce committee work. So thanks again to Josh for the opportunity, and thank you all for the work you do day in and day out for our people.
Thanks so much, Matt. Really appreciate you being here today and all the work the Alliance is doing to bring fruition to tribal clean energy projects and increasing resilience and bringing down costs that seem to be rapidly escalating. So before we move on to grid and tribal energy alternatives, I want to see if anybody has any questions for Matt. Feel free to, I didn't see any in the chat. So feel free to raise your hand or just come off mute. I had one question, Matt. So for the preferred provider list, is it available if the tribe has, clean energy project and they have an RFP already? Can they submit the RFP to you to get sent to that preferred providers list? Are they precluded, if they have already people like, in the area they think, they want to apply and they just want to kind of expand the pool, or sometimes, tribe might have just one group that's approaching them. They want to make sure there's some level of competition on this. Is that enough? How does that work?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Josh. This is a good one. And, we always, follow the tribe's lead, sovereignty, first and foremost. And so every RFP process is a bit different and how they're executed. We definitely have been learning a lot through our grant making process and walking that line. We've had instances where we've dug into some providers that have been involved in a project and found out some issues and helped some tribes avoid some potential issues, whether it was insurability or different things like that. So from drafting RFPs, we can advise each step along the way, or if there's a need to source additional bids or things like that, we're happy to make connections based on if we have a network in that services your tribe's region.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Any other questions? Okay, well, thanks so much, Matt. We may have some more questions at the end of Grid Alternatives presentation if they come up, but again, feel free to add them in the chat. So I'd like to turn it over to, I guess, Timashio and Taylor from the Tribal Energy and Grid Alternatives teams. Thanks for being here and sharing the great work that you all are doing. I'm going the wrong way. So I'll turn it over to you.
Oh yeah, thank you, Josh, and I want to thank TECC-X, for hosting these. These are very informational and a great resource for our tribes. And I want to thank the Alliance for Tribal Clean Energy also on their great resources. Again, my name is Timashio Anderson. I'm the Resources and Relations with the Tribal Energy Alternatives. Hoe shua demo. Wash a Timashio ha hintohe. Wach me a yemaba. Scotts Valley Gok do Round Valley Gok. Wach me te tene da. My paternal tribe is the Scotts Valley Band, Pomo, and my maternal tribe is the Navajo Nation, Tene Da. And it's an honor. I'm going to go ahead and pass this off also to Sarah Tinsley to introduce yourself. Sarah.
Good morning, everyone. Sarah Tinsley here. She, her pronouns. I currently reside in the Southern California region, long-term resident of our tribe here in Kuya Band. And pleasure to be here and listening in.
Cool. Taylor?
Hi all, Taylor Sieben here, she, her pronouns. I work with Grid Alternatives and particularly on the Access Clean California program, which I'll talk more about in a bit. Nice to be here.
Just a brief overview. This picture here is a project that was done in Chemehueve tribe, community center microgrid, carport solar, with partnership with the UC Riverside. Since 2004, GRID has partnered with federal, state, and local governments, utilities, and industry and communities to design and administer and implement solar and battery clean mobility, along with workforce development for communities in need. Next. Grid Alternatives mission. rapid equitable transition to renewable energies. Mission is to build community-powered solutions to advance economic and environmental justice through renewable energy systems. GRID is a national leader in low-income solar with workforce training and job training resources. We put people first, people, planet, employment. Next. Tribal energy alternatives. This vision is a balanced transition to energy sovereignty that is founded on traditional values. T is a mission-driven direct service provider that builds tribal-powered solutions to advance tribal sovereignty through renewable energy. T maintains a long-standing partnership with tribes, offering direct solar installation services, workforce development training, grant making, and policy. Next. Part of we have 5 core pillars at T. Grants and financial assistance, which unlocks funding opportunities through our Tribal Solar Accelerator Fund. Also other funding opportunities and project development, technical assistance. Our workforce has 15 years of hands-on experience working with tribal communities since 2010, which includes leadership development, supporting long-term capacity to expand capacity, skills, create jobs for our next generation. And our construction has, followed those same lines since 2010, worked side by side with federally recognized tribes with a community-centric approach. Our policy advocacy supports and enables tribes to deploy solar and storage projects that reduce electricity costs. Advocates also for tribal participation in the regulatory process and rulemaking process, and also formal proceedings. And our California Research Programs connects with tribes with resources, partnerships, and funding opportunities that lead to project development. Next. Some program and services that GRID and T offers to tribes in California. I won't read them all here, but I'll highlight a couple, which is the TECC-X, which is the disadvantaged communities in single-family solar. We also have the SOMA, which is solar on multifamily affordable housing, and support EV and backup battery storage, which I think we could get a little bit more into during the rest of the presentation. Next. Our Energy All program, which does support which is under the single family solar, which is the TECC-X, and also the community solar and the multifamily solar. In this particular picture, the map is kind of the areas that the TECC-X program has been installed, and kind of got a little bit of historical data. TECC-X started out as SASH, which was started in 2009. And we did 358 tribal installs in SASH 2.0, which is 2015 to 23. We did 295 installs. And then we have the TECC-X, and I think today we have 872 installs. Next. So another program that we have here that we work with as a partner with the state program is the SOMA program, which is the family affordable housing. And this supports solar, backup battery, and some upgrades, small upgrades. And in the map picture here, Grid had the opportunity to be a part of 3 SOMA projects, which I think happen to be still the only SOMA projects on tribal lands within the state. So we have Round Valley up north, and then we have the Arrowhead at the Bishop, and then the Coyote Valley Mountain Apartments at Bishop. Next.
All right, I'll jump in and try to be quick. I know we're running short on time, but just wanted to say a few words about Access Clean California. So at Access, we believe everyone should have access to clean, reliable transportation. So the way that we achieve that is we have a statewide outreach partner network that provides outreach and education on clean transportation options. And as Josh mentioned earlier, that network proudly includes some tribal organizations, including TECC and Prosper Sustainably, as well as the Native American Environmental Protection Coalition, NAPEC. Next slide, please. So basically how Access Clean California works is that there are a ton of different clean mobility programs out there that provide funding for things like electric vehicles, e-bikes, transit, but they can be really, really hard for folks to navigate. So we basically just help with that process. We have an online tool where folks can answer a couple of simple questions and find out all the programs that they may be eligible for. And then we also have the actual sort of human touch component where we have a client care team who can support with application preparation, getting together documents, understanding the program process, all sort of leading up to actually being able to submit applications to participate in these programs and try to get access to these funds that have traditionally not always gone to the communities who can benefit from them the most. And then next slide is just our contact information. I'll put it in the chat as well. I know today's presentation was very brief, but if you have any follow-up questions, please reach out. Next slide.
All right, well, I'll jump in here. So as many of you are aware, Grid's been around for over 20 years. So they've celebrated their 20-year anniversary. Tribal Energy has been a department, a sector of Grid for several years, well before my joining of the organization. We've just celebrated our 1-year anniversary as an affiliate office, as a branch of. So you can think of Grid as the parent company. We're one of the offsprings of Grid, which is completely focused on assisting education and workforce development within tribes. So we can go to the next slide. I'll keep it brief, but what we've done here is we've created out all these sectors in which we can help with very creative funding sources, and some of these are very unrestricted funding as far as like our energy innovators, our fellowship, where we have more for professional development of individuals that are looking to expand their services in tribal energy. It could be council member, it could be somebody within the tribe, it could be an energy department, any individual that's really looking to establish the professional skills. We do some networking. We have an 18-month program where there's some deliverables that have to be met, some SWOT analysis, some other, I guess, outlines of what your work would eventually have a cultivated product towards the end. We have our Energy Associates program, which has a stipend. This is something we're building out with some of our tribal partners. What we've come to understand is that some tribes don't always have the capacity to not only do workforce development alongside all the other 10 other facets that they're doing within their tribal organizations. So what we have is a very culturally tailored curriculum where we use a learning management system such as Canvas, which is really common in a lot of colleges and universities. So we have a Canvas LMS, and what we do is we launch this program for individuals to take advantage of anywhere from 6 weeks to 12 weeks of online tailored curriculum where they're learning anything from tribal projects around the nation. We watch a lot of videos, we do some dialogue, we have some write-ups, and some deliverables also that have to be met. And again, it's unrestricted funding where we're issuing a stipend that helps put money in these learners' pockets while they're learning about renewable energy throughout the nation. We have an IBT program where we come on site within the tribe with our affiliate offices from the northern regions to the southern regions, similar to like what we have the Inland Empire, we have the San Diego regions, we have our Central Valley, we have our Northern Valley offices, and they can come in and assist with teaching and doing on-site installation. For example, we've just had a local tribal partner work with CalJobs First, obtain the grant. We're written in as a component of that grant for workforce development. We've gone in and walked through, at the end of the grant, we will be assisting with 20 individuals that will go through the IBT and then roll right into our Energy Associates program, complete that, and they'll have some tangible work skills that they could take into their career advancement plans. Alongside that, we have our internship program. That's pretty self-explanatory. We work with our colleges and universities. We have our scholarship. That's very self-explanatory, where anybody who's tribally enrolled member can get access to those funds as they pursue their college endeavors. And then we have our training scholarship as well for renewable energy. I think the next slide, if I'm missing anything. The TSAF funding, open April to March 2027. Maybe Tamasha will want to touch a little bit more on that one. And as far as workforce development, if you have any other questions, that's what we've done with some of our tribal partners, alongside with there's very unique approach if you tailor it towards any grant funding that assists with workforce development. We have a pretty well-established team of 6 to 7 individuals that assist with just workforce development alone. Okay.
Yeah, just a little bit more. The Tribal Solar Accelerator Fund is a tribal-led philanthropic grant-making program that aims to expand solar job opportunities and catalyze the growth of solar energy on tribal lands, which includes supporting energy project fellowships, internships, and scholarship programs. The first one there is the Tribal Facility and Residential Grant, which a lot of these will be tailored to each tribe's specific needs, such as, you know, what their needs are as far as facility or residential. This funding can support rooftop or carport or ground mount installations along with the projects. And then the next one, we have the Tribal Energy Plan grant. And again, that'll be up to the tribe as far as, you know, how they want to utilize that funding to support their energy planning. It could be supported in compensating internally the planning team for their time, or contract the services for consultants or third parties, or cover meetings. And then the next one we have is the Tribal Solar Gap Funding, which, you know, could be used, you know, if there's gaps to complete a project. The tribe needs a little bit extra money to, you know, reach the goal. That could be utilized. You know, that grant could be utilized for those. It could also be utilized for if there's federal or state grants that have a cost share. I know that could be a barrier also, so that could also be utilized for those. And then the last one we have there is the capacity building, which again, that's a case by case. It'll be up to the tribe as far as their priority capacity needs, but it is multi-year funding. And I think, yeah, and so thank you. And next. Oh, wait, one more.
I did want to share just a little bit. I guess I wanted to highlight a little bit here how Kauai could be a really good prime example of like the wraparound services that have been initiated and received just with our tribe alone. For example, we've had my journey began with here was doing on-site installations, and my background's administration. So I took this leap of faith of trying something different. And we did some elderly homes through our affiliate office and Riverside office. Lisa Castelloni was part of that project. And what they did is we did an in-kind service as a tribe where they paid for the trainees to get that on-the-job installation for the course of the last like 5-6 years. Every year there's been 2 or 3 trainees that learn hands-on skill sets. They get the training to install on solar. With that, we've been able to service well over 20 to 30 individuals, which is our elders, to get solar on their homes and their projects. Aside from that, Lisa's also assisted the tribe in getting some funding sources for our local private cooperative to get those battery backups when we have those crazy power outages in our Southern California region. So she's assisted our tribe in that aspect. I've also been one of the individuals who partake in the workforce development side, where I learned the online curriculum, and with much persistence effort, was able to now help and assist with administering the same program that I also partook in. So as you guys are aware, workforce development is very challenging in a very rural development area, like California, Southern California, where we're at and located in Kauai. So just wanted to share a little bit of those wraparound services that GRID has been able to help just our tribe alone.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out. Here's our contact information, and just want to thank you for the opportunity and support Native nonprofits, whether we provide those services or others. Tribes need to take advantage of all those opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor, Sarah, Stephen, and Matt, for all being here today. For GRID and Tribal Energy Alternatives, I want to share they supported deploying through a bridge loan, 9 facilities in the middle of a tribe's reservation didn't have access to power, that allowed them to basically take advantage of the tax credit that they couldn't necessarily take advantage of without having bridge funding, which allowed the tribe to leverage some grants and scale up the systems to actually be the full size they needed to be to support kind of 24/7 operations year round with enough energy storage and enough solar. So just some direct experience I have and what GRID Alternatives has to offer. So we have a minute or so left. Any questions for GRID Alternatives or the Alliance for Tribal Clean Energy before we rejoin the group? And we're on the clock. We got 2 minutes before they boot us. So I mean, seeing anything, feel free to raise your hand or jump, come on. But I always have some questions. I mean, TECC is actively trying to help tribes take advantage of the programming offered by our partners like the Alliance and GRID and Tribal Energy Alternatives. So how does a tribe or tribal member participate? Is DAC/SASH still active right now? And what are the kind of eligibility requirements? So do you have a flyer available for DAC/SASH? I know it's very popular in the past. I'm not sure if it's as easy to participate now.
Yeah, Josh, I'll send a flyer here. I'll put it in the chat. But I know currently right now they're under the Energy for All program, which DAC/SASH is under. There is also a 500 referral reward program right now through I think July, and that'll be if you have a qualifying application, you refer it to a friend or family member, and they qualify, then you would receive the $500 referral reward. After I think July, it goes back down to its regular amount, I think, which is I think 300, I believe. But correct me if I'm wrong there.
So we're going to get booted in 10 seconds, so hopefully we'll get that flyer and share it afterwards. So we'll see you all in the main room. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Thanks, everybody.
We only have so much time, so I want to go ahead and just dive in and introduce Adrienne Moretz with the Strategic Growth Council. And she is going to be taking us through a presentation on the Plastic Pollution Mitigation Fund. And then we'll be opening it up for a discussion of what we want that fund to look like, because right now they are in the listening mode where we get the opportunity to shape how the program is going to be rolled out. And I'm not sure who the host is right now, but if you can make sure that Adrienne has the ability to share her screen, she's going to run her own slides.
Perfect. And then Shasta, we did have some slides up front here to go
Okay.
through. Tila, were you going to share screen with slides or do you need me to do it? Perfect.
Okay. So, am I going over these? Okay. All right, just making sure. Usually Angie is in charge of this, and she knows that I tend to be fly by the seat of my dress. But yeah, so if you're not familiar with Senate Bill 54, California Senate Bill 54, this is for the mitigation of plastic pollution. And so we've got until in next year, really, we're shaping the program for a while, but in July 2027, there's going to be money received from the Plastic Pollution Mitigation Fund, $500 million a year for over 10 years. So that's $5 billion, if I'm doing that math correctly. And this is part of an additional law that has to do with making producers responsible for the plastic that they put out there into the world that consumers end up buying. So that's what this fund is about, is to mitigate those effects now that we know that pollution from plastics and microplastics is a very severe problem environmentally and related to climate change and lots of other things. So I would love to hear from folks, and you can feel free to raise your hand or to answer in the chat. But I want you to think about, what are you already stuck on when it comes to pollution mitigation? What are some of the barriers that you're facing? What are you already trying to do? And what actions can you take with this funding or what do you think you would want to cover as an opportunity with this funding? And I know we only have 11 people in the room, and a lot of them are folks that are on my team. So I might have to just call on some of the rest of you to be thinking about what actions you're already taking. And Grace, I see you came on camera. So were you going to speak up?
I just want to say that I'm here to listen, but I think something that I think a lot about living in a city, and I don't know what tribes are facing, but I think that there's a lot to be said for like trapping pollution in waterways and making sure that the stream is actually, when I say stream, I mean like the source. Like, how do we go from purchasing to consumption to, putting it in a blue bin or something, and then it still sometimes ends up in the environment. So I'm thinking about that cycle, and I think about, the recent flying by the seat of my dress. I think about how there's this, the recycle symbol has been greenwashed, that we don't really like, we've shipped a lot of the plastic overseas, and we call that recycling. And then there's like some packaging that I've seen at different stores that said this is 98% consumer recyclable, or produced from 98% post-consumer recycles. I think that there's just this grand misinformation, and so you don't really know what it all is. And so I'm thinking about like, what are the tangible things that we can do, like using water bottles for solar lights, or facilities in different states that could actually process the material and repackage it for different items. So that's just me rambling about different things that I think about and what knowledge I have in this issue and in this topic area. And I would love to hear other people's thoughts. And if that was too vague and around the bush, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to contribute to the conversation.
No, that's great. That's the kind of thing we need to hear. And we'll be having more opportunity to talk about this when Adrienne is done with her presentation. But Shayna, I see your hand.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I'm Shayna. I work with Moms Clean Air Force. We work on clean air policy. And I also work on facilitating a partnership with the National Tribal Air Association. They work with roughly 162 tribal federally recognized communities. And the topic of this is really like what in a lot of cases with tribal communities, there's no like waste management system set up. There isn't like a regular day that trash comes and picks your trash up. And I know on my reservation, because I'm from the Navajo reservation on the New Mexico side, because it spans over 3 states. So for where I'm at, where my grandma and my family on my dad's side live on the reservation, they just implemented trash designated areas where like wasn't established until the like early 2000s, when they were tribes in that community were told not to burn trash anymore, because that was a regular that was regular in people have been doing that for centuries. How do you get rid of waste? It's been ancestrally a knowledge that you burn the trash. And we're seeing like cultural burning coming back into tribal communities too, as a way to working with the lands and revitalizing doormat seeds. But like our trash pickup, and then like we just stopped burning trash. There's still areas, people are still burning trash because they can't afford to haul their trash to a designated trash station, which tribal members they're told to pay a fee as soon as they get to that trash designated area. In a lot of cases, we're seeing, illegal trash dumping in a lot of areas throughout the tribal communities and along bordered towns of these reservations, where, non-natives also are dumping trash in these rural communities. And then like, how does this plastic end up way out here? Scary. In a lot of cases, we think people are being lazy and just throwing trash around and littering, but we're also not taking into account that the wind picks up trash from landfills and throws it around and carries it from one area to another. And voila, we got trash lined up along our fences. Any area that like it's able to catch that debris. So that's how we're ending up with plastics everywhere. It's very easy to lift up by the wind and get carried off either somewhere close by or maybe even further than we even expect it to go. And then in some cases, like what I've seen, and I just recently came back from Blackfeet Reservation in Montana, they're experiencing climate change winds. They're experiencing extreme winds that is not normal. So in a lot of cases, we are seeing high winds at certain times of the year. And I always wonder, like, why is there so much trash in our neighborhoods? Because, those that are low income are technically placed near, unfavorable sites like industrial areas and also landfills. So, we're right next to that. And when you put Mother Nature and nature in itself combined together with our trash, it's everywhere now. But one thing that we've been campaigning around our Moms Clean Air Force is the fact that like we do not like support plastic incineration or plastic recycling, because 90% of those plastics can't be recycled. Only 5% of those plastics can be recycled. And once they get recycled, there's no regulations on the chemicals made to make them repurposed. So that's the other dangerous part too, is that there is no regulations on the chemicals used to recycle, to repurpose plastics, which is, it has been seen that these plastics have altered the gene sex in fishes. So there is like reproduction harm from plastics that, science and health are concerned about. So those are some of the things that come to mind when I think about tribal communities and, where we're at today and how can we get people to stop buying plastic, and or maybe like even advocate to businesses to stop using plastics if they are able to. But I see the drawbacks of where we're at with some of the products are, they cannot use some type of like storage container. And so they find plastics to be really easy to contain their components to their products so it doesn't leach out. So that's another, some of the topics I've talked to, native vendors as well.
No, that's great, Shayna. Thank you so much. And I'm going to comment on your thoughts when we get to the end, because I'm thinking about how we can turn that into a way to use this money. So do we have another slide, Serena, for me to go over before we go to Adrian?
Yes, there's a couple.
So
I know.
yeah, this is a lot, you guys. Remember, you're going to be able to you'll get these materials when the webinar is over. But we're talking about what we want to be able to use this money for. So, like based on what Shayna was saying, think about things like air pollution mitigation, air quality mitigation programs, because we know that those things like the burning of plastics in those materials does create air hazards. So where are we going to go with this? We can mitigate the harms, but how? How do we do that in a way that's going to be the best fit for our communities? And, we can get the plastic producers to have more responsibility, but those materials are already out there in the landscape. They're in our bodies. There's plastic, microplastics are everywhere. So we have lots of needs. And here are some ideas to think about, like ecological restoration and monitoring. And that includes things like cleaning up illegal dumps, and land stewardship is a part of that. How can we have more independence and self-reliance when it comes to food and food sovereignty? So we're producing on our own and not having to be part of the plastic food chain that brings those foods to our communities. Again, skipping down, reliance on fossil fuels and oil refining. We need to reduce that as much as possible. Plastic is a fossil fuel product, which not everybody knows. So let's think about that. And then let's think about projects that have been waiting for funding for a long time, but maybe aren't the best fit for state or federal grants. Let's be, what's the word that I want? Let's be creative in the way that we think about what we want to tell Adrian to take back to SGC about the ways that tribes can best use this funding for their communities. So next, do we have another one? See, this is what happens. I know we had a meeting on this meeting, and I clearly did not pay any attention. So again, a few things that I think Adrian has already heard and others have heard in terms of the funding is that we need to make it simple as possible. Let's do a tribal set aside or a carve out for tribes. We need to be clear about what eligible activities are, and we don't want this to be complicated with reporting and invoicing. Basically, let's make this money that's easy to spend, easy to report on, and easy to help our tribal communities. Let's have some TA providers and do the best we can to make this funding work with other funding. So these are some of the things that have already been suggested to SGC. And let's just think about human and environmental health needs in tribal communities and other underserved communities, and how this money can help that. So next one. All right, Adrian, I'm just going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
Yes, let me do a quick mic check to make sure that you can hear me
Gotcha.
clearly. Perfectly.
Yep.
I'm going to just turn off my camera to make sure that my voice stays clear. Hi, everyone. Adrian Retz. I'm with the California Strategic Growth Council, or SGC. Quick shout out, related but unrelated, to the webinar we're having tomorrow, which will go over SGC's, all of our open funding opportunities, and I will be mentioning the Plastics Fund in that forum as well. So really encourage you to listen in if you're able. I am going to very quickly go over the Plastics Fund, the backgrounds, and set the stage for a conversation, which you already are primed for. So love hearing the ideas that you're sharing already. I am going to I was going to share some slides, but it says host isn't allowing sharing. So
Oh.
maybe we'll give just a second to double check. And if not, we can just have a conversation. I'm happy to chat through this instead, but maybe we'll, oh, here we go. Perfect. Okay. Okay. Let's see. There we go. So a little bit of grounding in these slides. There are a lot of them. I wanted to keep them intact so that we could share them with you after, but please know I will be tabbing through many of them very quickly. And I can't see your faces right now. Feel free to come off of mute and we can have a conversation throughout this. But I do think it's important to do just a wee bit of background on the Plastic Pollution Mitigation Fund and SB 54 as a whole, because there are different funding opportunities associated with each of those things. They're kind of on different timelines and pathways, but very interconnected, of course. And so the conversation you were just having really leads into the background of all of this. And just want to start by grounding us in saying, we are at the very beginning of this process. So there are not grant programs developed. There's not funding, applications available right now. We're before all of that. We don't even have access to the funds until next year. And so right now, what we are doing as a state interagency team is really talking with you, understanding what your priorities are, your ideas, some of the challenges you're facing. We're doing through a variety of methods. And then the state is developing an investment plan this fall that will help guide us in what sort of funding opportunities we put out when the funding is available. And I'll go through this again at the end. So again, forgive me as I tap through many of this, but I do want to note that there are 4 agencies that are charged with implementing the Plastic Pollution Mitigation Fund. I'm going to just say their names, but California Environmental Protection Agency, or Cal EPA. That includes the Air Resources Board of CARB, which I believe is in the other breakout room. Natural Resources Agency, which includes Ocean Protection Council, Parks and Rec, many other boards, departments, and offices. Us at the California Strategic Growth Council, we are really well known for our community designed investment programs, building capacity of our communities, providing technical assistance. And the Department of Justice, who they've really been aggressive in taking action against plastic producers already, but these are the 4 agencies that are named in the development of this fund. I'm going to go through this quickly because you seem like you're already very aware of all of the impacts of plastics on our communities, but we really like to set the stage by saying they're everywhere. Scientists have found plastics and microplastics, Sheena, you were mentioning, in the fish we catch, in the water we drink, the soil where we're growing our food, etc. And they last a really long time. They can be in our environment for hundreds or thousands of years, and then they don't fully break down. They just fragment into smaller and smaller pieces. And Shana, you mentioned this as well, as that there's a lot of chemicals in these plastics. And that story kind of, really doesn't begin at the water bottle. And Shasta, you did a great job in setting the stage for this. It's really at the beginning of the plastic life cycle. So it's not us throwing it away. It's really the long journey that touches communities and the environment, all the way from the extraction of oil and gas to the manufacturing, the transportation of these plastics, and then them getting to the point where they're breaking down in nature after our use. And this is a slide from UCLA Luskin Center. They have been doing some great work on plastic pollution research. They've developed a map that really shows you the site-based exposure. So you're talking about living near refineries, for example. They have mapped where the biggest impacts of those sites are. And so we like to show this slide to say, it's not just about the single-use plastic bottle for this fund, it's about the full life cycle of plastics. But the state's been doing some work already, and I won't go through all of these, but like Ocean Protection Council, or Ocean OPC, they have an ocean litter strategy. The Water Board has methodology for testing for microplastics. Still lots more we can be doing. But let's get into the meat of it. And I, again, will go quickly just to respect your time. But the Plastic Pollution Mitigation Fund is a vital component of SB 54. So SB 54 is the holistic bill that passed. It's a very long name, California Plastic Pollution Prevention and Packaging Producer Responsibility Act. That's why we keep saying SB 54. And it's really this fundamental shift in how we as Californians address plastic pollution and its health and environmental impacts. So it really is going to move the responsibility from us as consumers to the producers of these plastics. So starting next year, in July 2027, we will start to receive $500 million a year over the next 10 years for a total of $5 billion from those plastic producers to create this Plastic Pollution Mitigation Fund. And this fund is really dedicated to repairing those ecosystems and protecting the health of Californians. So its job is to mitigate the impacts of plastic pollution on tribes, communities, rural communities, and the historic and environmental concerns. I want to pause here quickly to say that SB 54 as a whole is a whole program designed to work with those producers to address some of the things that Shayna was talking about, like setting up recycling, reuse, and refill stations. So more of those things to help people recycle, but also to design new products that are not plastic or are biodegradable. That's the producers that are going to be doing that. They're managed by a single entity, and Cal Recycle is overseeing that whole process. So I am not an expert in that side, but I do encourage you to check out that work, and I can share a website link in our chat because they have a plan for those producers that's out for public comment right now. And that's relevant to you because there's separate pots of funding for tribes to do stuff like transport those materials to a station, set up a reuse or refill recycling station of your own. And so this fund is not designed for that. But there are separate buckets available. And I realize there's a ton of overlap and that's a bit confusing, but happy to help answer questions and clarify that. To further go into this fund in particular, which again is for mitigating those impacts that your communities are facing, it's going to be split into two buckets. And 60% of those dollars, and SGC is named in this bucket, is for monitoring and reducing historical and current environmental justice and public health impacts of plastics. And most of that money has to go directly to disadvantaged, low-income tribal communities. The other bucket, 40%, is for environmental impact on the natural environment. So impacts of terrestrial, aquatic, marine life, human health, and about half of that has to go to disadvantaged, low-income, and rural communities. So generally, this is not really surprising slide, but community-based organizations, local jurisdictions, land trusts, tribes would be eligible for this funding as it becomes available next year. All right, so I think this is the important part of the presentation. There are a lot of slides here, so I'm going to tab through them rapidly, but I'll go through a few important highlights. So generally, we're trying to engage communities, prioritize solutions that you design, and make sure we're delivering those health benefits that the statute requires. And we are, again, at the very beginning, we have set up these kind of broad, overreaching categories to really just spur your imagination. So these are not the only topic areas that could be funded, but they're kind of broad and far-reaching so that you can think about the priorities and challenges in your own communities and tribal lands and share your ideas with us. So this is a really wide net we've been talking about. Each of these categories I'm going to go through. Well, actually, let's not do that only because I see we have only 20 minutes left. But just know things like outreach and education. I believe it was, Grace. Yeah, Grace, you were talking about the misinformation that's out there about plastics and recycling and how do we combat that? What are some tangible things we could do? That's squarely, I think, in the outreach and education. So if you're educating your communities on the life cycle of plastics and how we can, as communities, mitigate those concerns, these are the types of things and ideas we'd love to see, because it kind of is nicely in that education and outreach. But it's not the only category, of course. So we can think about removal, restoration, remediation, like nature-based solutions. We could think about, let's see, in research and monitoring, like community science initiatives, really you as community groups and nonprofit organizations or other groups that are focused on this kind of research and creating maps of contamination, for example. You could also think about neighborhood scale projects, like the community-led pollution prevention category. It could be something like, how do we prevent those plastics from entering our waterways? Again, Grace, you were mentioning this, like community run litter abatement programs and much more. We can also think about public infrastructure. So this might be filtration systems to protect our groundwater, green infrastructure to effectively intervene with microplastics, but less on like developing a recycling center, because again, that's the responsibility of those producers to pay for. And then I do want to call out technical assistance and capacity building. Angie did have those slides that Shasta was going over at the beginning. SGC is steeped in this work. We know a lot of your communities don't even have the capacity to apply for these funds. And sometimes you need support in building partnerships, applying for the grants, sometimes even developing an LLC or getting a bank set up. And so those types of things would be eligible as well. On the flip side, just want to emphasize again what I spoke about. I'm going to tab through each of these. They're just slides on each of those 7 categories, forgive me. The producers are responsible for things like source reduction. They're doing outreach and education for just general, like, you should recycle, here's where your recycling program is. They're doing R&D on new types of plastics or biodegradable materials or things that reduce and meet those goals. They're going to pay for curbside collection programs and similar. So the fund is not going to be doing that, because we want the producers to pay for those things. And then again, on our timeline here, we're at the very beginning. We have consultation letters. So if you want to have a formal consultation with our interagency team, they're technically open until June 26th. I believe we're going to extend that. We're looking for another Northern California tribal roundtable. We've had 2 so far, one in Clear Lake and one in the San Diego area. And we're continuing to have conversations with your communities. But it's not the only way. I believe Angie is gearing up a response from tech groups, so groups that are participating in these calls, for our public survey. Again, we're extending that so you can contribute to that until about August, but kind of the conversations we're having here today, you can also fill out online if you don't want to share anything today. And we do have a website. I'm going to drop that in the chat so I can stop sharing my slides here. With that, we have about 15 minutes left for discussion. Again, I'll be doing less of this can work and this can't work. More just want to hear, Shayna, Grace, exactly what you were talking about. The things you're concerned with, projects you're working on or have ideas for, priorities you want us to consider, things we need to be thinking about when we're setting up these funds, like simplified applications. We've heard a ton from, and I'll close by saying, we've heard a ton about tribal communities, about limited waivers of sovereign immunity. We've heard some really cool ideas, things like using the charcoal that's left over from cultural burns to provide filtration and water to help eliminate plastics. We've heard some concern about things like a retardant that's sprayed for wildfires that then trickles down onto tribal lands and into waterways. We've heard, a lot about very complicated NOFAs, funding availability lists are 100 pages long and not having much time to apply. So simplifying those funding requirements and making it a longer runway to apply, and providing technical assistance to those tribal communities. So those are some of the things we've heard. Would love to open it up back to you, just ideas, thoughts. I can answer questions as I'm able. And then while you're thinking of those things, I'm going to drop some links in the chat for you. I'm going to come back onto camera.
Thank you, Adrian. And Serena or Tila, I believe we have a slide with some prompts, some questions for folks to think about and to maybe come off chat or come off mute and answer. But I'll tell you something that came to my mind, because I missed the in-person roundtable that you had at the Rincon Band. I know Angie was there, and I sent Alexis from my staff because she's our solid waste management person. But as it happens, I had an email or a meeting yesterday with my project officer from EPA, so on the federal level. And I said to him, hey, we're doing this thing tomorrow, and then we've got this plastic pollution mitigation fund. What would you want to spend the money on? And he said, I would love it if there was an ability to test people for the presence of microplastics in their tissues. And I was like, okay, I don't know if that's a thing that we can actually do without taking large chunks of organs. And I know it's been done. I know it's been done in fish tissue and mammal tissue. And so I'm like, I'm not sure if that's something you can do to a living person. Maybe you do it in an autopsy and like just check it out, their brain. I think my brain is like 98% plastic at this point. But in any case, that was something I was thinking about as well. And the reason I am interested in that as something to be able to fund, and I noticed that research was one of the options there, is because I think that if people know what's inside them, they are more likely to be concerned. And just like when you can do a blood lead level test, when you find out your lead levels are high, you're probably going to start worrying more about the paint in your house and the pipes bringing your water. So that was one of my thoughts. And Grace, I see you put in there a collaboration with tribal health centers. I'm sure that's a possibility. But I would love to be able to do that kind of targeted community level research to see what actually are the levels of exposure in a community. So that's a science thing I would love to do.
Sounds like it's coupled with the education component. If you're saying like you want to see what the levels are, but then educate people on now what, if you're kind of like, if you have high blood pressure, what steps do you take? Okay, I'm capturing
Right.
all of this. Great to hear.
But here's our questions for folks who want to unmute or put something into the chat for any of these reflections. Like Shayna, I see your hand. Great, jump in.
So I like the ideas about like the ashes to use for cleaning plastics out of water. I think that's a really good one. Also like I don't know if you guys heard about communities like soil health and like using mycelium or like mushroom species to revitalize the soils, but also there's like a certain mushroom species that has the ability to break down plastic and remediate the soil. So there's science in that too, with like with mycelium science being a component that is not invested in, and a lot of our tribal communities are trying to bring back food sovereignty, and a lot of our lands are toxic. So remediating the lands is also one of the things that we've been working on around toxic facilities, like a oil and gas refinery like Suncor here in our state, which is going to be a challenging action to do. But like just on like the minor scale of things, like remediating the lands is one of the things that we've been trying to put more investment in. That we used to care for the land, and that was taken from us. And a lot of our communities no longer hold the knowledge of growing food for themselves anymore, what that looks like, and how much are you supposed to harvest, or how much are you supposed to plant in order to harvest enough for the, for your winter time and stuff like that. Like, we no longer hold that common knowledge anymore. And remediating the soils has been one of the things too, around like waste and like landfills, and plastics has also been on the topic of those projects that are working on soil health, because there's a lot of trash that ends up in the soil, and then we have like these landfills, and people are like, we never know when a community is gonna maybe not use that landfill, and they pause, and then like down years later they might be developing on that used to be landfill. So those are the things that come into my mind as like ideas, and incorporating science and technology in other ways too.
I love that.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to echo what you're saying in that agriculture is one of the top things that are coming up as a priority for any community we have spoken to, from the Central Valley to tribal communities, and food sovereignty. So the things you're saying are something that we've been hearing. I love the idea that you spoke about the mushroom species. And I saw Grace put in the chat, is that what you were referencing that's being developed for oil spills?
Are you asking Shayna or Grace?
Grace, you put in the chat that was being developed.
I've seen, but I don't have exact details. There is research for some of the major oil spills that have happened in California and on the Gulf Coast. There's research around a specific spore, or it's not an algae, but it's some kind of mushroom species that will actually go in and consume petroleum and actually break it down into and neutralize it into its organic matter that is not harmful to the environment. And I'm blanking on what the component is, but it is a fungus. It's been touted in national media as a really, cutting edge technology. It has not, I don't believe it's been deployed yet, but that would be, I believe the research is there, and I believe it's done at California universities or some of the coastal communities. NOAA might have that information. Who else might have the information? I want to say a lot of the UCs on the coast would have it. So, if you have connections at UC San Diego or Santa Cruz, they might be good sources for that. Yeah. I'd be curious to hear how that could be deployed on hazardous landfill sites, right? And back to Sheena's point around, these forever chemicals, right, it's not just plastics, but it's additional stuff. They're, at least in municipal areas, a lot of the water districts are building water treatment plants to address PFAS and the forever chemicals. Tribal communities don't have that luxury a lot of times, right? And so, I work with a lot of Central Valley communities that are in unincorporated counties, and they're in service districts, and they're not connected to municipal water systems, but they deal with a lot of water pollution. And so I'm thinking about, I personally have a countertop water filtration system that was less than $100. A lot of the community air grant community grants, in order to meet their emission reduction plans, have deployed air filtration systems. What kind of opportunities would we have to be able to support tribes that, frankly, they have some of the worst water quality in the nation, right? Because they don't have any infrastructure. They're never supported. So are there programs, would they be open? I know it's one more device for them. I know it's like a stopgap measure, but is that something that could really support communities at the source is being able to give them clean water in their homes, have an immediate impact, and then have longer term projects that could create water systems that support them. And then go look at the Kauai Subbasin Multi-Benefit Land Repurposing Program. There is a I want to who is it? There is a tribe, and I'm trying to find them.
Torres Martinez.
Maybe, but I want to say it's the Wakchumni have a project in the basin and they are doing plantings, and they have a food system for their tribal members. It's a really cool program that they're using through the MLRP, through Department of Conservation, to support communities getting back to their food sovereignty. So I want to offer that as an example that they really made some really cool connections through the Department of Conservation.
Well, awesome. Well, yeah, sounds like you guys had a great breakout there. Shasta, you want to give a brief report out?
Yeah, we had a good discussion, and was really grateful to Adrian from SGC for going over what this fund is meant to allow tribes and other communities to do about plastics. And I think there's still a lot that people need to tell SGC about how they want to see this money spent. So we have the link in the chat for where you can give more information to SGC about how this plastic pollution mitigation fund can be deployed. But it sounds like there is a lot of flexibility to it and a lot of great ideas out there about how we can figure out not only how much plastic pollution we're dealing with, but how to best make up for those pollutants and protect our communities. What about you, Josh? How was the energy room? How was the electric chair?
It was great. It was hot. So we had Timashio, Taylor, and Sarah from Twin Alternatives and Tribal Energy Alternatives sharing, breaking down kind of the details, and then on all of their programming. There's a lot available to tribes. So if you're interested in advancing energy projects, I encourage you to review the slides and the recording there. And then same thing for Matt Dannenberg with the Alliance for Tribal Clean Energy. So, TECC is grateful to have other, partner organizations like GRID, like like the Alliance, in trying to, work together to advance these. So we are all collaborating together to ensure that tribes are advancing their energy priorities. I think we all have that in mind first and foremost, but I think there's a lot out there beyond just the state and federal funding through organizations such as ours. So again, encourage you to review those and take advantage of any of the opportunities, and just reach out and ask what we can do. All right. Well, I think we had another productive TECC-X. We look forward to seeing you all again in July. Topics to be determined at this stage. But appreciate you all being here and joining us today, and keep doing all of the good work that you're doing out there.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.